Good morning, eighth graders. So we are about to start our water cycle assessment. This is something that you have been familiar with for as long as you probably can remember. So that's why this unit is just so quick. But 9.2.2 assessment, water cycle, and we're just going to call it a mini project. So you have the opportunity to tell the story of the water cycle because we are working with Middle School Earth Science Standard 2-4, which states that you can model and explain the processes involved in the movement of water between the geosphere and the atmosphere. So the water cycle. So the water cycle is extremely important to the sustainability of life on Earth. It is recycled, it's reused continuously, which is why it's called a cycle. It's also significant in starting to play a role within our weather, things that we're going to be learning about here in the next coming weeks. So your assignment is you are going to write a poem or a children's story or create a stop motion show or writing or in performing a puppet show, whatever you can imagine about the water cycle. Your goal is to turn the water cycle into something entertaining, something that we can show younger kids and start introducing them to the water cycle. And not just the water cycle, but the water cycle as like eighth grade perspective. You will need to include information to teach someone about the necessary parts and how they're all connected. You can't just be like condensation's this, precipitation's that. That's lame. You need to have it all connect. And then you may also want to include information about like weather and environmental factors relating to the water cycle and things like that. So the criteria specifically is that you must include the following terms within your poem or your story or whatnot. So condensation, evaporation, precipitation, runoff, and solar energy. If you can sneak something in there about transpiration, phenomenal. You need to include how the water cycle influences our weather, storms, fog, etc. Now, how to tell a story or write a script. There are kind of two different narration sort of things that you can take on this. You need to make sure that you have a character and you write about how you as the character are involved within the water cycle or how that character is involved within the water cycle. So you can start as a raindrop, a snowflake, a flower, a cloud, the sun, etc. You can take this kind of omniscient sort of perspective where you're this all-seeing being from above watching this all happen. You can take a first person narrative where you are the actual character moving through the cycle. Um, so those are kind of like the two options. It does not need to be made like a book. You can use PowerPoint, you can use Word, etc. We live in the age of technology. Let's use our technology. Some of the better ones I've seen, yeah, are of my more creative friends who have taken the time to essentially put a book together. But I know I have so many other creative kiddos that maybe you are better at using Canva or whatever. The world is your oyster. It just needs to be written as a story. Okay, I do have some examples of Will's old favorite books that I'll have at the front lab station that you're welcome to come and take a peek at. Now, if you wanted to write a poem, poems are phenomenal. So you can write, haikus are going to be really, really challenging, along with cinquains and possibly sonnets. We just have to keep in mind if you limit yourself to the amount of lines or syllables, you're going to have to think very, very critically in how to get that in there. So haikus are a 575 syllable count. You could do a free verse, which is very like non-defined, no formula, no pattern. It's kind of however you want it to be. Cinquains are only 5 lines, no syllable limit, but there's only 5 lines. Epics is essentially like a story, but it's told with a little bit of like a bounce to it. Um, a ballad tells a story, but in the form of a song. I have heard songs come through about the water cycle, which has been super fun. And then sonnets are 14 line poetry written in iambic pentameter. So it's kind of like the da-dun, 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 sort of like syllable-esque to it. It's the one that, like I said, you kind of get that bounce with it. So those are poetry options. Now I have included some examples from one of my more favorite podcasts. They start all of their podcasts with a poem of some sort. So this is Fossils by Stephen Chin. I will make sure that the audio is available on Schoology as well, because I'm not sure if it's going to come through in a recording. So I'm just going to put the audio on Schoology for you so that you can hear it.
Now, as always, we introduce this week's science topic.
Okay. The second example is Natural Disasters by Sam Schultz. Again, just another example of how you can turn poetry into something more scientific and whatnot.
Now, as always,
So you have the option of a children's story, you have the option of poetry, you also have the option of doing stop motion. And there are a couple of apps that you are welcome to kind of play with. I will 100% admit I've never like goofed around with these apps, so I'm probably not the expert you want to talk to. But you can use apps that are found in our app store or in our manager. Snap, Flip a Clip, and Animation. So we have to remember that stop motion is an animated filmmaking technique in which objects are physically manipulated in small increments. So it's a lot of individual photos taken or drawn and then strung together and made into kind of like a flip book. So when you flip through it, it goes really, really quick. So again, this is an example of stop motion if you wanted to take a peek at that. Excuse me. So you have an idea of what is stop motion. I think of claymation, things like that. And then finally, puppet shows. So usually, like these are dramatic performances staged with puppets or with action figures, things like that, where the puppets are provided with dialogue and there's maybe music in the background. Yes, you could use like a puppet doll, sock puppet, whatever, or you can use toys and kind of manipulate them. So both of these are examples. The top one is essentially just like a kid playing in a sandbox with his toys. That is technically a puppet show. And then you have things like Sesame Street, where it's a legitimate puppet and you have people manipulating them underneath and all of that. So, how are you going to be scored? Well, on your page, there are 4 criteria, but I'm going to tell you this right now. Your presentation can be crossed off. We have decided to take that one out for the time being, just because so many of these are going to be somewhat performances to where you're going to anyway. But yeah, we're just kind of out of time this year. So you can cross those out. So the 3 criteria that we are going to be scoring you on includes the use of the necessary technology or terminology. So condensation, evaporation, precipitation, runoff, and solar energy. We are going to score you on understanding or like adding in at least one influence the water cycle has on our weather, storms, fogs, etc. So that you guys have learned a lot of different storms that involve our water cycle thus far. And then finally, just the style of poem or children's story, we're able to actually identify this is a children's story, this is a puppet show, this is this type of poem, and all of this. So yeah, so those are the 3 that we're going to score you on, and you will notice that there are opportunities for 4s in this project. So take that into consideration as you are making your final product. As you are working over the course of the next day or so, your voice level needs to stay down. You're not working on the same project with the same people. You are working on your individual projects. But yeah, you can be near your friends and ask questions to them so that hopefully it's understood better. Yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask your teachers. We'll be here to help as best we can. Yeah, any questions, just let us know. Thank you, 8th graders.